So thank you everyone for joining. I hope it's sunny wherever you are, from Washington, D.C. through Budapest all the way to Kiev. And a very warm welcome to our partners as well, CKA, the Civil Collegium Foundation. So again, if you would like to listen to the webinar in Hungarian, please click on the little globe at the bottom right corner. Ha magyarul szeretnétek hallgatni az előadást, akkor kérem válasszátok ki a magyar nyelvű csatornát a jobb alsósarokban.
And before we jump in, I just also like to introduce myself. I'm Liakh. I'm one of the other co-founders of Unhacked Democracy, and I'll be co-moderating this session as well. So yeah, I'll pass back over to Sophie.
So as you know, we are recording this event and you will be able to ask your questions in the second half of the webinar. And in the first half, we will hear from our two amazing guest speakers. And please, we encourage you to ask questions from our guests in Kiev. And please type your questions in English or in Hungarian in the chat box. And we will try to keep our event to an hour. And with that, I hand it over to Elliot, my co-host and dear colleague, and he will do the intro in the first half of this webinar.
Thanks very much, Sophie. So across Europe and beyond, there's a real growing frustration with the system. But there's also at the same time a lack of vision for future change. And this has led many to turn towards authoritarian leaders who often offer the illusion of certainty and control. But Ukrainians have shown us that in the deepest crisis, tapping into the collective intelligence of its citizens can help to forge a new vision and defend the country. That's why we really wanted to explore here, what we can learn from Ukraine to rethink institutions and develop creative ways and solutions to open them up to citizens. So in this discussion, we'll explore how you can co-create a new vision for society by bringing different groups together, and specifically what tools have been created and tested in Ukraine. We'll look at what is the mindset and values that are embraced by Ukrainians to reimagine the future, and what role does a future-orientated thinking play in the country's defense and forging a post-war vision for a new Ukraine. So to hopefully try and answer some of these big topics, we've got two fantastic speakers today, Victor Liakh and Folko Trevers. So Victor has been president of the East Europe Foundation since 2012. It's one of Ukraine's biggest civil society organizations and works with state and local government agencies, community leaders, NGOs, and research institutions to pioneer innovations in e-governance and civil society, local and economic social development, and energy efficiency. Before joining EEF in 2008, he was executive director of the Child Wellbeing Fund Ukraine, and before that he worked at the Ukrainian State Center for Social Services for Youth and UNICEF. Thank you for joining us, Victor, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Elliot, and my greetings to all of you from sunny Kiev. Wonderful to have you as guests, and thank you very much for making the time to listen and to talk to us. Elliot, thank you so much for this introduction. Definitely, I represent here an organization which worked since 2008. One of our priority is supporting civil society organization, building its capacity, developing new opportunities, and bringing innovations to civil society, and bringing civil society organizations to innovation area. And if I may present you how civil society doing in Ukraine, I would divide this period of full-scale invasion for three big, I would say, periods. One of them is definitely first reaction, first response of civil society for full-scale invasion, which lasts from 2002 until 2003. In 2004 until 2005, we've had this period of, I would say, normalization or stabilization. And then in 2005, we had freeze of USAID funding. So which is deeply affecting at the moment the whole civil society sector. So definitely to provide you with a bit of context, I have some figures for you, but I will be glad to drop in the chat box several links so you can dig deeper on some information about current state of civil society organizations in Ukraine. This information and these sources are available in English. Definitely 2022 was a very hard year for everybody. And civil society responded immediately for first consequences of war. Again, Ukraine suffers from biggest humanitarian crisis after Second World War, having 6.5 million people who are left the country because of security reasons, and civil society was the major force which responded to that. About 40% of organizations started either humanitarian response or psychosocial service or volunteering activities, as well as education. We've seen a massive reallocation of civil society organization from occupied territories to safer areas and to the central Ukraine and to the western Ukraine, as well as to other countries. And here we're talking that everybody's volunteer here in Ukraine. Either we are helping to the front line, or we are making special safety nets for our people, providing them with services. We are taking care about IDPs, contributing to the civil society, different kind of charitable civil society organizations. And definitely that was the first reaction, the first response. But then Ukraine started to regain occupied territories. We came in after 2023, we came to the situation then, or many organizations came back to let's say, reallocated back to their home communities and started operations. And definitely the context changed, and many civil society, up to 62% of civil society organizations, they would need to change or add new programs or change their program portfolio. Definitely humanitarian response, volunteering, different kind of education services, and provision of variety of services for needy population was the main focus. But also we see how civil society with time started to enter to the absolutely new area of activities responding to new threats to Ukrainian society. One of them, for example, is we have a special type of volunteering, which is rescue volunteering. Again, every day, one or another city is bombed or under attack of drones, and definitely first response from civilians. So we can see the trained volunteers who are helping our rescuers to come to the first who come first to the areas affected, who work with civilians, who provide first aid, who help rescuers. Another type of volunteering, we have these people who are involved in the landmine education, which is a new threat for Ukraine, as people are coming back to occupied territories, and in some cases they are polluted with mines, which is a new threat. And definitely we respond to that as civil society. Many other areas like this are appearing every day, and we see tremendous shift for civil society organizations, which are moving their activities to new program territories, doing new program activities, as well as building their capacity in new area. So then the new phase we experienced at the moment is the freeze of funding from USAID, which was critical hit to the civil society. It was, I would say like this, that was very powerful hit, but not critical. Still, civil society continue operations, but according to just very fresh survey of civil society organizations, about 95% of organizations say like that they've been affected by freeze of funding from USAID, which been probably the biggest funding source for Ukraine among technical assistance program or governmental funding. That's definitely about 50% of organizations said like that they were significantly hit, and 40% of these, among these 90, said that partially they stopped projects, which means that definitely they would need to reorient their project activities. They would need to find other source of resources, different kind of resources, not just funding. And they would need to build their capacity in absolutely new areas of knowledge. And probably as a part of overview of the situation at the moment with civil society organizations, I would say also that you probably know that we are a society in the situation of war, and we have martial law. That means that we are not exercising all our rights, but at the same time, like we postpone all types of elections. We are not, Ukrainian society cannot have, cannot exercise freedom of gathering, for example, during the martial law. But at the same time, Ukraine is very well known as a country which implements a lot of innovations, especially in the digital sphere, digital area, and Ukrainians applied actively instruments of e-democracy and influence into decision-making and to the decision-making process, as well as to local governments or national government, through a variety of e-government or e-governance tools like e-petitions, e-consultations, different kind of public consultation platforms, as well as volunteering platforms. And here I just wanted to say that according to the UN e-government index, which was conducted, recent survey conducted in 2024, Ukraine was ranked #1 in the world for e-participation, in the category of e-participation. That means that Ukrainians are actively using different kind of electronic tools to exercise their rights, which is from one hand, it's very surprising, but from another hand, it definitely, this is a way how we adapted to the situation. Then civil society increased potential in the area of implementing different kind of innovations and to provide citizens or members of their civil society groups or organizations, provide their opportunity to be heard and to influence to the government, parliament, country, which is very I was really pleased to see this results of the survey. And definitely will be going, and also wanted to mention that during the, we increase our position by 57 position in this ranking during the war. During the 2 years of war, we increased this position. That means that it's tremendous success of civil society organizations. They're entering into new sphere of innovation, and providing new opportunities for citizens and for other civil society organizations. And just to finalize that, definitely the situation now for civil society is not very easy, again, with limited opportunities for getting funds for civil society organization or because of lack of labor force, because of migration, for example. It's really hard to find people who are willing to work for a civil society organization or willing to contribute. But at the same time, we see massive interest of Ukrainians in being a part of civil society. For example, in 2024, we're experiencing 20% growth of number of registered civil society organizations comparing to 2021, which means that Ukrainians, they already received positive experience in working with neighbors, working with other group of people, and this experience is positive, and they would like to go ahead and register organization, and they are understanding the need of formalization of their activities. In most cases, they already have some funding sources or resources behind this solution, this decision to register the organization. And probably the last point I would like to share with you, again, where my organization is really actively involved. We strive to provide civil society and non-governmental organizations in Ukraine with opportunity to interact with government and exercising their rights fully in an electronic way. So including we build a system for electronic registration of civil society organizations, making any changes, legal changes in the statute or government bodies, as well as apply for funding and report for funding, checking up, building partnership, getting to know partners, getting all necessary trainings. And we strive to do this so Ukrainian organizations to be able to get everything online. Again, we are all about the offline as well. So, but that's one of the key area we would like to move ahead in the future. Probably I will stop here and just will pass the floor to Elliot.
Thanks so much, Victor. Once again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat in either English or Hungarian, and we'll get to them after our second speaker. So I'll introduce Sophie, who will introduce Fulko.
Thank you, guys. And I'm actually going to ask Victor to think about some of the amazing examples our audience might be interested in, because it's very important that to highlight that Ukraine is incredibly innovative. And we cannot, when I heard about what the East Europe Foundation is doing, I couldn't even have imagined the scale of e-governance and innovation that's going on in the country. So we'll come back to you, Victor, on that. Excellent. And first, I'm going to introduce Fulko, who is based in Kiev. Fulko Treffers, an award-winning architect from the Netherlands. Fulko is an urban designer and co-founder of Rosquit, an urban coalition for Ukraine. Rosquit brings together over 100 professionals in and outside of Ukraine to create methodologies for rebuilding the country. They work to develop future-oriented urban design methods fueled by studies on other post-war countries. Fulko is also director of the Dutch studio 12N, or Urban Matters, and former director of the Temporary Art Center in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. So Fulko has been living in Ukraine since well before the full-scale invasion and stayed. Why does a Dutch national, a Dutch architect, decide to live in a war zone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question, actually. I hope my story that I prepared a little bit can give an answer to that. So I think I better just go back to where I started 10 years ago by getting acquainted with Ukraine, and then step by step what happened and what I experienced and why I wanted to stay. So it was 2015 when I was invited to be part of a team of Ukrainian and international architects, small group that would look at Mariupol. Mariupol, that was a city that I never heard of before. Nobody actually in the Netherlands had heard of it before, almost nobody. Now it's one of the most famous cities in the world. Unfortunately, you could almost say. But Mariupol was a city between Crimea and the Donbass, so the two occupied areas of Ukraine at that moment. So 2015, it was 1 year after the occupation. So it was, let's say, a tricky time to go there, 10, 15 kilometers from the front line. And that was also the reason why we as architects were invited. Because 2014, unfortunately, I wasn't there, but there was Maidan. There was the Maidan Revolution, which was called not the Maidan Revolution as we know it in the Netherlands or many other countries, but it was called the Revolution of Dignity. And this says so much about Ukraine. The name of that revolution was about dignity, dignity in life, dignity in mind, dignity in heart. And already realizing that made me interested in going to Ukraine and feeling what it was about. I could not really understand. Being from the Netherlands, being Dutch, it's really, yeah, we live in different narratives. But 2014 was the year that the local society, the civil society, kicked away their own repressive government, not just like a couple of thousand students, no, really all around the country there was support for that. And how that organization had suffered I think, Victor, 93 people that were killed, the amount of endurance that they had to have to stay there on the street the whole winter long. And they stayed positive and they knew this is our fight. We have to fight for our dignity and our values. 1 year later, the total context changed because there was a new government, and this feeling that the society can be really strong if they stand for their rights and their values, that was embodied along the whole, or amongst the total society. Not everybody was, of course, 100% agreeing with the final result, but the understanding that this could be your power as a resident, that was amazing. And that's when I came in. So that's what I felt when I was in 2015 for the first time there, when we were in Mariupol, when we were in Kiev, and I traveled around the country for a couple of months to really understand what is this quality, what is this power. And what did I see? I saw a young generation that took the lead, many people younger than 30 years old, middle age, my generation, like 40, 50 years old, that was small. Many of them had left the country in the 90s to seek for better opportunities, personal growth. So the young generation stayed, and they really were already at that moment fighting for the country and understanding not everything is perfect here, but we are the ones that can make the change. And I also saw a lot of other people joining and not complaining. And for people in the Netherlands, that was so strange, because normally we in the Netherlands, we are used first to see something, then analyze it, and then complain. But Ukrainians don't complain. They look at the situation. Maybe they don't like it, but they don't complain. They decide to change it or leave it as it is. And that is a very important power. And that is also why I wanted to stay. I just wanted to be in that context, because that was amazing and heart-warming. I decided after this first 2-3 months in Mariupol, I decided to explore Ukraine much deeper. And I had met already a large network in those months, and I started to extend it and to invest time even a little bit of money by traveling, by not getting paid, by stopping some projects in the Netherlands, to just understand what Ukraine was about. And that was not only because I wanted to help Ukraine and to move forward, to teach there, to support in the urban planning, but it was also for me. It was for me personally to learn from Ukraine, to learn from that attitude, that mindset, and to grow as a person. And I remember very well that Ukrainians were starting to become aware of that strength, and also, for example, there were some meetings and talks I had with friends about Belarus, and when they were looking at Belarus in 2019, 2020, they said something like, finally, the people are standing up, they're going onto the street, and Belarus and Ukrainian society, that is quite close, it's quite familiar group, many connections, and finally they're standing up against the power. 1 or 2 years later, they didn't stand up anymore. They were too late, and it was really in 2021. The civil society in Belarus was knocked down to the ground, put in prison, fled the country. So there is a momentum that you're too late, that you're, and the difference between Belarus and Ukraine, if I would be a researcher and I would have had time to study that, it would be really nice, because there's two paths, and they led to two totally different countries, to totally different societies, to totally different approaches in freedom of mind, freedom of opportunities, etc. And so Ukraine somehow stopped that moment internally. And then the worst thing that you could imagine happened. And 2022, Victor, of course, told about it. The Russians entered and are now on a full scale. And if it wasn't for the civil society, the government alone could have never stopped them. We know that. I mean, nobody is surprised by that in Ukraine anymore. There was not like a complaining towards the generals and the Ministry of Defense. No, it was just, we have to help, we have to support, and everybody did something. Even to a destructive personal level, to a destructive mental level, everybody was feeling guilty that they didn't do enough. People were feeling guilty that they entered the army as a volunteer or not entered the army as a volunteer, that they left the country with their small children to keep them safe or not leaving the country. Everybody was feeling guilty, but it was from the same value, was from the same mental mindset. I want to keep my freedom with this country here and now. And you cannot do anything wrong, but it felt for everybody a little bit like they did. It took a few years to go. In the meantime, I was working and everybody was working, because if you don't work in times of war, what is freedom then really about? I was working in Ukraine, and I found out that, first of all, the years before the full-scale invasion, the challenges were big, but everybody was like, okay, this is the moment of change. This is the moment of opportunities. The decentralization reforms that was by the new government that was installed in 2014, these decentralization reforms that were major step forward. And it was a combination of that, what the government did, and that what civil society did. And everybody took his part. And it was shaky, and it was sometimes a little bit frustrating that it didn't go fast enough. But everybody moved and moved into the same direction. And in 2022, that direction was stopped, but the people kept moving. I was totally surprised that after 2 weeks of the full-scale invasion, my Ukrainian friends, they called me, okay, Filko, you're back in the Netherlands now. I fled the country as well. So you're back in the Netherlands now. But we can think about recovery already. The war was just 2.5 weeks old. And we can start thinking about the future already. That was crazy. I was flabbergasted. I said, I need to think about it I need to sleep about it to understand what you're doing. 2 hours later, I knew this was my new purpose. So it was not only about Ukraine, it was not only about me personally, but it was also about a new profession. I really knew that me as an architect and an urban planner, I had to reshift my mind into a new profession and learn what that really means. What is urban recovery? What is rebuilding a country? What is the processes? What are the technical aspects? We don't know, but we worked, and I started to build up an organization, like Sophia said, of over 100 people that are now working on that. The majority is Ukrainians that stayed and Ukrainians that had to leave for different reasons. Ukrainians that were already outside of the country and wanted to do something back. Some of them also went back to Ukraine because of that. The diaspora, the expats, they said, I cannot stand living in Germany and seeing my country get disrupted. I go back to this country in war. And so did I. I decided that my life in Ukraine was more valuable than it was in the Netherlands, that I could make more impact, but I also received much more. I received more love, more, let's say, like a reality check, that the Dutch safe system is not always like that. And we experience that in the Netherlands now more and more, because also our system is changing, like the system in Hungary has changed. So my profession has changed, my mindset has changed. Now I'm talking about urban planning in terms of safety, in terms of how to design and how many bomb shelters we need to build. If we need to build bomb shelters, I'm planning evacuation routes for cities, topics that I never thought I would ever touch, but I'm doing it right now. But I'm also planning the other way around. I learn about psychology of buildings, how buildings can give comfort, how buildings and materials bring more quality and safety, how it can be done really fast, but still in a good way, how to use the society and the civil needs, but also the civil power to change buildings, to change plans towards their need. So I'm much closer to urgent needs and to impact than I ever was. And one of the beautiful examples that I worked on, I will finish with that, and then there's time for questions and talks. We presented last week a report on the Hirske community. I want to say a few sentences about it. Hirske is a small village, small town in Luhansk area, so in the total east of Ukraine. It was occupied in 2014, liberated again 1 year later, occupied in 2022 again, and the community had to go away. Most of them went to Ukraine, stayed in Ukraine in 3 main places, and the rest spread around. This community asked me, please, Fulco, you and your organization, Roskvit, your planners, your thinkers, your innovators, please, can you think of a future plan for our municipality, for our small Hromada? Hromada is the word for municipality or the town. Can you think with us what our future looks like? And first we rejected. We said, no, we will not do that. Because I don't know if there will be a real future for your city. It's so close to Russia. It's so close to the front line already now. There's so much destruction. I don't know if this town, with the numbers of people that are being killed, with the numbers of people that have been had to leave the country, that is building up a new life somewhere else, I don't know if it makes sense to do so. 6 months later, they came back and they said, Fulco, can you think about it again? We want to have some future vision of our city. And then I said, okay, let me think. Let me brainstorm about it, to think if I can do something for you. And we gathered a team of Ukrainian, only Ukrainian urban planners around me, and to say, does it make sense? And if so, when does it make sense? What is the thing that we can do for them? And we said, okay, we can do something for you, but only if you allow us to make a scenario when you are able to return, but also a scenario of your future where you're not able to return because it's a minefield or it's still a war zone or because it's Russian. We were totally shaking when we wanted to share that scenarios with them. We were shaking, saying, we can join you in a project, if you allow us also to think the negative outcome. And they said, yeah, of course, that's a good idea. And I was like, huh? Well, how can you be so positive on these negative scenarios? But they just wanted to have support. They wanted to see something for their future because they could not think anymore. And then we started working for 6 months, and we presented it last week. And we have scenarios for the city totally different, but all interconnected. One scenario where we kept a memory of a box of memories and an archive of what this village was like, what Liakh was like. The smells, the stories from grandmothers, the strawberry fields that could be rebuilt somewhere else, regrown somewhere else, the memory of these cultural events, the memory of, and we have, yeah, we call it now our box of memories, and that archive can be used as just a box of memories that people can just look into and think of better times in the past. But also, we started making a small idea and stepping stones of rebuilding, if it would be liberated, all based on that same box of memories, so that we would use the memories to rebuild or start rebuilding with seeding plans, small things to start rebuilding the community again if the Russians would have been kicked out. So this is one of those examples where the community started pushing me to think deeper, to use my brains, to use my creativity, and then come up with a controversial, unusual solution, which made them really, really happy. And we're crying when the presentation was over, together with people I only met online. But we, in the end, cried together in the Kiev presentation room. So this is typical Ukraine, and I'm still hoping that I ever become that Ukrainian myself.
Oh, Fulko, these words are so emotional. It's difficult for me to speak now, you know. It's I'm really feeling what you must be feeling, and I'm sure many of us here in this webinar. So I thank both of you for this very honest presentation. And we have one question from Katya, but I wanted to ask Elliot if he had thought of any follow-up questions. I mean, for me, it's very obvious that you have to believe it to become it. You have to see it to become it. And that's why we are here, to learn from you and get inspired. And I just wanted to say, in the middle of the presentation, Slava Ukraina, glory to Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. Thank you so much from both of you. I suppose one thing that, you know, we at Unhacked Democracy are very keen to draw out, which is around, you know, building new connections between, say, different sectors. So you're talking about psychology, you're talking about creative sectors, you're talking about entrepreneurship. So I think this is maybe directed towards, you know, both Victor and Fulko. What's your experience been like basically trying to build these new connections? You know, you're an architect, you're working with, you know, potentially the military, you're working with municipalities. Victor, you're working across a broad range of sectors. How has that been? And are there any basically lessons for other civil society working across Europe about how you can utilize these different skill sets?
Or America, because we have some guests from Washington, D.C. all the way to Los Angeles.
Some challenges there, yeah.
Yeah.
Victor, you first, or?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. First of all, I would like to thank Fulko for this wonderful and emotional speech. Definitely, I share every word he told, and definitely this is so much resonates with me at the moment. Definitely, at the moment, let me put it like this. Our vision is that every Ukrainian identifies him or herself as part of one or another civil society organization, civil society group, any possible volunteering group, etc. So that's my vision. I think we made a huge step towards that. Ukrainians built a lot of social connections and social nets during this time. I mean, here in Ukraine as well as abroad, I just need to say that a number of different civil society organizations, even from very local communities, they've been able to build connections with the partner organizations in Hungary, in Czech Republic, in Poland, or in Europe, and they extended these connections. And I would say we became more part of the global civil society movement representing Ukraine. Second, I definitely see that through those people who left Ukraine because of security reason and settled down in Europe or in the United States, they also formed a number of civil society organizations and civil society movements, trying to spread the word what is going on here in Ukraine, as well as build new connections and possibly to bring back from Europe new experience, which we can adopt here in Ukraine to move ahead with recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, rebuilding Ukraine. That's probably another message I would like to share with you from here, from civil society in Ukraine. Then it turns to reconstruction and reconstruction of Ukraine or recovery of Ukraine. We don't want to rebuild what we had before 2022. We would like to build absolutely new democratic and liberal country. That means that we strive to build a modern country, reform country, corruption-free, with a lot of social nets, innovative, etc. So we have progress in some areas. We have challenges in other areas, but definitely it's really hard to kind of to do reforms as well as to fight at the same time. But definitely civil society in Ukraine has shown that it's absolutely possible for Ukrainian society transform during the hardest possible times. And definitely we are thankful for all support we received from the entire Europe and European Union and individual countries, including Hungary, including Czech Republic and our close neighbors, but also the wider Europe and the US. Definitely, I think that regardless of political tensions between countries we experience now, I would like to see stronger connections on human level, on community level, on business level in between, which to my mind, this is the idea of civil society. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Victor. Before we get on to Katya's question, I just want to throw that back at Fulco, if he has anything to add, but possibly with an additional question, because I know that your organization, as you mentioned, is made up of over 100 different people, experts, and you said the majority of them are from Ukraine, but they're also from around the world, the rest of Europe. So what's your experience been in terms of working across sectors, but also across borders, and how is that? What are the lessons there as well?
Yeah. In the meantime, I was thinking about what Victor said, but yeah, also here I agree with your approach, Victor. I want to share another experience, maybe being in between countries in a way. So the Netherlands also reached out to me. So what can we learn from Ukraine? And it's a little bit similar question that Sophia asked or you asked, Elliot. So what does it mean in democratic values? How can we learn? And I tell this story about this power of the civil society very often. I mean, this is so unique, and you should embrace that, not misuse it, but because people are tired, they're really tired. So there needs to be a good balance between power to the people, but also support to the same people and by those who have the ability. And so I think that the Netherlands now is one of the many countries that is really supporting Ukraine, but also can learn something from it. And what I try to do is try to analyze with the Dutch partners, like the Dutch government, how is our own civil society actually organized in the Netherlands? And it has another structure. It's very other culture, but it's very widespread. And if you connect if you try to connect the situation from Ukraine in Ukraine to the situation in the Netherlands, I see some similarities, but we're now because we're not ready yet, but we're now analyzing where do the dots not connect. And some of the dots that do not connect is about taking responsibility, is about this complaining. And we're a little bit, in the Netherlands, everybody's a little bit spoiled. And that's normally not that bad because then it's like a privileged situation, but to show the other options as well. So we are trying to build awareness campaigns about how society can play a bigger role, what the government should do, but also how the society should try to learn from those things that we see in Ukraine. This is really, really needed. It's needed because the Dutch government, as an example, but probably any other government also, they cannot face all challenges themselves. They need to have this combination of challenges of the civil society and the government, and they both can play their roles. And at this moment in the Netherlands, that is not in balance. That's what our analysis does show. And now we're trying to see, okay, what difficult changes can we suggest, but it starts with awareness. And so therefore Ukraine has this beautiful example, and that's why I'm asked to show that how you can, from a totally different context, with really, I mean, it was so much poorer than the Netherlands, less money, less capacities, bigger distances, bigger challenges, but still the society plays a much more important role. And how comes? And that challenge, that's what we're trying to teach to the Netherlands. I assume that other countries can do that as well. I'm promoting at this moment, as far as I understand it, I'm promoting the mental approach, the mental state, more than the model, than the technical or legal approach, who is more like awareness campaigns, sharing responsibilities, collective examples. I think these are more important at the moment than the fact that you have officially the responsibility or the power or not, or where to place it in the local government, in the central government, in between or lower. I mean, that is all models. That's just technical representations of something that the society wants. But how can you really change the mindset of what the society needs and wants? That's where I'm now trying to get more grip on, knowledge about, and discuss, at least in the Netherlands, but hopefully also in other countries. And that's one of the reasons why I was so happy to get this invitation.
Thanks so much. I mean, I've got endless questions, but we'll jump to Katya's.
Me too. Yeah, let's Elliot, Katya's question.
We'll jump to Katya's. So she asks, are there discussions within Ukraine's civil society about what model of governance might be possible for Ukraine, given the understanding of flaws in existing capitalist societies?
And I can even just jump in and hello everyone, and thank you so much for the discussion. Just to add here that with the EU accession for Ukraine, there are a lot of conditionalities that Ukraine is now trying to, meet, and everything. It's just in order to access the EU. Now my question is, at the same time, we understand there are certain flaws, certain limitations in the existing capitalist democratic societies. Now, we understand the country is at war, and Victor, as you pointed out, of course, fighting and demanding the country and dealing with the lack of those 8 billion people who left the country and so on. It's really, really hard then to think about any reforming. But at the same time, as Ukraine is accessing the EU, are there any discussions on how it can be modified in a way to learn from mistakes or for those limitations and deficiencies that the current democracies exhibit? And they present weaknesses, and that's what we see the increase in authoritarianism and decrease in attraction of democracies. Thank you.
Well, Katia, thank you so much. This is a very deep question, and I think that it was to have probably a separate discussion on what kind of lessons learned we have from current democracy state and capitalism democracy. And again, EU integration, I absolutely agree. EU integration as well as recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, there are two major trends among civil society sector. And in both trends and both activities, we would like to take an active role, absolutely active and crucial role. Definitely, we are forming the concept for vision as, for example, focus at how each particular community should look like, and we would like to include by every possible means, offline or online, citizens to decision-making process. The same actually would apply for entire concept of the country as well as the entire concept of the government and EU integration process. Just need to say civil society organizations are actively involved in all aspects of EU integration, including negotiations, including communication, what is going on in this process, and including benefits, and probably kind of other aspects of joining EU, because again, probably we understood that European Union is not a pinky unicorn, which will provide us with a lot of funding. This is a big preparation work should be done here in country, and we are ready for that. One sample, several civil society organizations, including East Europe Foundation, we organized EU Integration Hub, which is a big physical space, and we invited government as well as civil society organization, different kind of EU integration experts to share this place as a one place for all types of trainings, negotiations. And so this should be a neutral platform for civil society, business associations and government, so they can come together in one particular place and have open conversations with regard to kind of promoting and advocating Ukrainians' position versus EU, for example. Then it will turn to discussion of such issues like trade, transportations, etc., where we might be in a clash with the European Union, really. So that's probably one answer. And another, definitely, we have experience of the world building capitalism democracy. This is one way, but we have wonderful lessons to take into consideration while building new Ukraine. Again, I think that innovation should be definitely part of that. And we already showed that civil society is capable to introduce kind of world's level innovations. And actually, by the way, we are getting prepared in exporting or simply giving free of charge our solutions and to share it with other countries. Probably the word, I will write down here the word DIA, which means an action, but also the name of our super app, government super app, which is available for every Ukrainians, and 20 million Ukrainians are using that for accessing all government services, as well as some elements of e-democracy, including, for example, public consultations or e-petitions. And again, our vision is that Ukrainians will be able to exercise all their civic rights and possibilities for influencing government or local authorities through online tools, wherever they are, in wherever the country they are living or having temporary protection status or wherever, they are able to be to keep connection through these instruments with their local communities and influence and take part in the decision-making process there. So I would say, in a nutshell, I would say that new human communication technology should be taken into account when we are developing a new democracy, especially during the new capitalism, I would say, era. But also, I would say free media and open data will be kind of key to keep democracy going.
Yeah, definitely, Victor. Those last few words, and I know how you are working on that and yeah, securing that in a way. So that's really really important. I connect the question from Katja to, I think Anya Beria has a little bit a similar question related to the capitalist system. I'm like you probably understood, I'm 99% positive about what I experience in Ukraine, but there's also some very difficult challenges, especially also on this democracy part. In times of war, you have a general that needs to lead the military, that needs to go, and everybody I know agrees that has to be organized top down, and it has to be done in a very decisive way. Otherwise, you will not be able to win this war. That approach is slowly starting to be the kind of culture in the national government, and that also has a backdrop. In a country, like I said, in 2014, this decentralization became so. The many responsibilities that used to be in Kiev in the national government or partly in Kiev, like combined local and national, that had been transferred to local authorities. Now you see the opposite direction again because of this approach that you have to have during the war, where you have like a strong leader that sends down the signals and the quests and the requests. That combination is kind of a mix that now is also disturbing. I know that people are hesitating to stand up against something because they don't want to fight against the national government on a specific topic, because that could lead to disruption, etc., etc. But on the other hand, they want to express their voices. They want to show that this centralization that is slowly coming back again, that is also a risk. So at this moment, looking at the Ukrainian context as a lab for democracy or as a new model, yes, when I see the electronic developments, yes, when I see some kind of tools, or when I see some experiments and pilots, but for the whole system, I do feel that we're like on a crossroads, and we must make sure that this dealing with the war and what that means for government and governance and dealing with a normal society that is still going on. People still need all the other services and functions as well. They still have all the legislation that they have to pass, and in my field, every permit has to be done, and every diploma has to be followed. Everything goes on, and that should be decentralized even more than it was already, because that process was still going on. So it's a difficult question exactly at this time, and I hope that the mindset stays enough with the 2014-2021 mindset and doesn't get corrupted or disrupted by this new, unfortunately necessary military approach that we also have to face.
Thank you to both of you. I'm mindful of time. It's now top of the hour, and we could stay here and ask you 1,000 questions, 1,000 more questions. But I think we will send out an email with the recording and some of the links that Victor will share with us with some amazing examples. So please expect an email from us with a follow-up. And thank you so much to both of you. If there is any more last question.
Can I make one last suggestion? I mean, it's not even a statement, it's just a suggestion in the question of what I now was thinking on as an example. You were asking what can other countries learn from this. I expect that there will be a lot of traveling in the next couple of years. People will, like negative traveling, forced to flee the country, forced to save your own lives, forced to for whatever reason. It can be military, it can be internal, external, it can be climate. There will be a lot of migration, I expect. What I found fascinating in Ukraine, when you talk about participation and democracy, thinking about the new future of Mariupol, thinking about the new future of this Liakh, or I'm doing so many different smaller and bigger urban strategies or economic or social strategies for cities. More and more I have the question, how do we include the IDPs in our community, the internally displaced people? How do we include the refugees that are living in Germany, that used to live here? How do we include them? How do I hear their voices as well? Can we officially, legally include them in our participation processes, in our voting systems? Can they be city council members? Do they want to be city council members, even though they live so far away? All those questions are more and more on the table, and that is again was this emotional moment for me too, that people really live according to values of communities, values of a society, and not to power, but to see what is the value here and how can we use it as much as possible. And that is also something interesting to learn from for other countries, I would say, that how do you keep your community with you in decision making on whatever level, in safety, security, and communication, that you keep close to each other and that you have the people being involved, because that keeps them closest, the easiest. So yeah, my last remarks were these.
Thank you. Victor.
And if I may, Fulco, I will just add that during the wartime, Ukraine produced a lot of different kind of humanitarian technologies, which we would like to share with the world. And our position is that once we develop these technologies and innovations, with support from international community and support to other donors, we don't want to take them or make money out of them. We would like to share it, and we offer these innovations to other countries, like a reskilling platform for those who are changing profession, like IDPs, for example, and different kind of training courses on how to adopt these people, integrate into new communities, to demining platforms or platforms for automatic allocation, special funding for IDPs through their mobile phones without collecting all documents, etc. So these are technologies Ukraine would like to share with the world and pay back to these countries, which require them, and we are ready to do that. Just we understand that we are part of the global world, global community, and definitely civil society is not just bordered by Ukrainian borders. This is now we understand that we are much wider. So, and we would like to share and to pay back to the global civil society. Let me put it like this.
Thank you very much to both of you. And thank you to our partner CK, the Civil Collegium in Hungary, and to our interpreter Agota, our technician Daniel as well. And I wish you a very nice rest of the day and a sunny week, rest of the week. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Героям слава. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks.